Gus, we all appreciate your coming in here to talk to us, but you have the right to have an attorney present also.
Oh, well, I can't see how that would be necessary. But then again, I have no idea why I'm here.
So you wish to continue?
Please, I'm very anxious to find out what this is all about.
Sir, your fingerprints were found at a crime scene.
Really? That's surprising.
A drug-related homicide.
So when being told that his fingerprints were found at a crime scene, Gus slowly shifts his gaze away from the detectives. And this movement is very obviously consciously controlled, rather than a reflexive gesture. He is deliberately acting surprised here, as opposed to doing it out of an automatic stress response.
Gail Bedeker's apartment.
So you knew the victim.
"15 years ago, I established a chemistry scholarship at UNM. I named it after Maximino Arciniega, a dear friend of mine who died too young. Gail was a recipient of this scholarship. He was perhaps one of 3 dozen.
When the detectives realize he knew the victim, they immediately begin building rapport with each other. They were not expecting him to admit that he knew them, and Hank then shows signs of an elevated respiration rate, opening his mouth as a result of increased sympathetic activation. His amygdala flags the significance of the detail, triggering a mild adrenaline surge, increasing his breathing rate and sharpening his attention. And interestingly, Gus then does this subtle mouth tense, paired with a blink, as well as darting his eyes to the left. And this is a cluster of behaviors that suggests autonomic arousal and controlled composure.
I see. And Mr. Bedeker graduated in
1999.
That sounds right.
And you kept in regular contact with him over all this time?
Oh, no, I hadn't seen Gail for years, until I ran into him a few weeks ago.
Ran into him where?
At the restaurant. Well, ran into isn't quite accurate, as I assume he came by to reestablish contact with me. We caught up briefly, and he invited me to dinner the following night, and I accepted. It was perhaps a week later I read about him in the paper.
So there is a very interesting reason that Gus has his hands on the table here, and he's deliberately doing it to reduce his nonverbal leakage. And it's a very common tactic used by poker players to avoid leaking information that gets released by hands fidgeting or twitching. And by placing his hands openly on the table, he appears transparent and non-threatening. But despite holding this pose, he does slip up slightly here, and we see him twitching his hand as a result of the stress manifesting in his nonverbals. This happens when he lies to the detective about only hearing it in the newspaper 2 weeks later.
Drug-related, you said?
It's a good possibility.
The paper made no mention of that. I assumed that it was a random crime.
So after years of no contact, he shows up in your restaurant, remakes your acquaintance, and invites you to dinner?
Yeah, he wanted money.
Gail Bedeker asked you for money?
No, he didn't come right out and say that. He spoke in terms of a vague investment opportunity, but it was my suspicion, yes, as to why he invited me into his home. He was a very, very talented chemist. But for reasons I never understood, he was more interested in taking shortcuts than what would or could have been a very promising career.
At this point, they are all clearly suspicious of Gus. The DEA detectives maintain strong and unbroken eye contact with him as they press him for details, applying subtle but noticeable social pressure. In response, Gus deliberately matches their gaze, ensuring he makes consistent eye contact with each of them. By doing so, he appears open and composed, countering their suspicion through controlled nonverbal confidence. And liars tend to either avoid eye contact completely or make too much eye contact as compensation, whereas Gus does it perfectly here. He's a very good manipulator.
But personal shortcomings notwithstanding, he was a warm, gentle person, and I thought a lot of him. At any rate, I declined his business offer, and after what was a very pleasant meal, left.
Can you tell us where you were on the night of Wednesday the 23rd at around 8 p.m.? Not an accusation, just a question.
Oh, I understand. Let's see. 23rd. I was at a fundraiser at Presbyterian Hospital. I was there from 7 to about 10.
Anyone else?
Sorry, yeah, just one other thing.
So it's super subtle but extremely revealing. Hank looks at Gus, then to his hands, back to his face, and then to his hands again. That pattern is not random. It's behavioral auditing. He's assessing whether Gus's composure is genuine or consciously feigned. And this is the moment that Hank realizes that he's watching a performance. He knows that Gus is there solely to deceive them and manipulate them.
Is Gustavo Fring your real name?
Is it my real name?
I know you're a Chilean national, but there are no records of you ever living there.
Really?
I mean, records show that you immigrated to Mexico in 1986, and then a couple years later you were granted an entry visa to the United States. But there's no record of Gustavo Fring ever having existed in Chile, which I find, I don't know, strange.
Well, really, it isn't. General Pinochet's government was guilty of a great many sins. First and foremost were its human rights abuses. But it was also notoriously unreliable at keeping records.
Gus is extremely manipulative and clever with his nonverbals here. He knows that Hank is already suspicious of him, so he doesn't waste any energy trying to win him over. Instead, he redirects his attention to the other investigators. And when he mentions human rights violations being the greatest sin, he deliberately makes eye contact with them, not with Hank. And that selective gaze is calculated. He's aligning himself with them on a moral level, to try and build rapport with them. He doesn't try and convince the one person who sees through him. Instead, he works on manipulating everyone else. It's incredibly cold and calculated.
I'm sure if you keep digging, you'll find me.
Okay, I think that's it, Gus. Thank you.
I hope that I was of some small help.
You were, absolutely. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
Oh, no, please don't get out.
Thanks.
Gentlemen.
So Gus does a faint smile here when saying that Hank will find him. The muscles around the eyes that make up a genuine smile don't become engaged here, revealing it's consciously controlled. And he does this again to appear friendly but also to manipulate. Then when he's in the lift, we see him consciously tapping his fingers together, and this is a method of self-regulation. He does it to generate proprioceptive feedback in the brain, and this is a method of self-regulation to stabilize his autonomic arousal. He's effectively trying to calm himself down and maintain his composure, showing that being questioned caused him extreme stress. He was not calm during that situation. It was all feigned. And this is just a really detailed and well acted scene that displays that Gus is an extreme manipulator. It's a really good scene.